Creating a user interface for your machine learning model can make it easier to adjust the model and visualize the results. Gradio is a Python library that makes it super easy for machine learning engineers to create intuitive user interfaces. In this course, Abdul will teach you all aspects of Gradio, including deployment.
Dear fellow coders, welcome to One Little Coder. Gradio Machine Learning App Course 2021. I welcome you to this course, and in this course you will learn the fastest way to demonstrate your machine learning model using Gradio. Gradio is a Python library and we are going to learn more about Gradio in this course. Follow us on YouTube to learn more about machine learning, data science and analytics. This course contains 9 sections and this course runs about 1 hour 15 minutes. Let's get started understanding what does this course contain. The first thing is you will learn what is the current problem that we have in the ML prototyping space. And then you will learn about advantages of Gradio and what is Gradio. Next, you will learn how to get started with Gradio with a very simple example to create your first Gradio web application. And next, there are a lot of different components of Gradio. So you have component for image, you have component for text, you have different components, and in this section you will learn the different components of Gradio. And in the next section, you will learn how to handle multiple inputs and multiple outputs in a typical Gradio application. And next, you will learn about debugging your Gradio application and also using a very special feature that Gradio has got called flagging. And next, you will learn how to improve your Gradio application's user interface and user experience. This section will also help you understand how can you change the theme and also have your own style in your Gradio application. And next, you will learn how to share the Gradio application with everybody in the world and also how to add security, which means add an authentication layer at the top so that only people whom you want to check the Gradio application can check. And finally, we are going to finish this course with a capstone project where we are going to build a Gradio application that is powered by deep learning, and that deep learning powered Gradio application, we will learn how to deploy it on Hugging Face spaces. So starting from understanding the space to completely deploy this application on a permanent hosting, you will learn everything from scratch end to end in this 1 hour 50 minutes course, which is about 9 sections. If you do not have time for all the 9 sections of this course, what I've done here is in this particular page, you can actually see that there are certain things, those have been highlighted, and those highlighted things are the most important thing. If you only cover these important things, you will be able to build a decent Gradio application. So if you do not have time for everything else, you can at least go fast track with these highlighted items, and that will give you the necessary knowledge to build a Gradio application which you can use to demonstrate your machine learning model. Let's get started with the course, and I hope you will find this course valuable. In this section, we'll learn a little bit about the challenges that we have in building a machine learning web application, especially for prototyping. So if you go to Google and then say machine learning web app using, then you would suddenly see a lot of suggestions like Flask is there, you've got Streamlit is there, you've got Django is there. So you've got all these suggestions there. So the first problem that you usually face when you want to build a machine learning web application for prototyping, let's say, or even I can say that machine learning web app prototype web app using, yeah. So if you say this thing, now you would see a lot of suggestions. Flask is there, again like Streamlit is there, you would see Django somewhere. So the first problem that you have is, what is the solution that I should pick for my current need? And it could be anything, right? So you have solutions varying from Flask to Django to Streamlit, and a lot of other solutions exist in this space. Especially in recent times, if you see, there are a lot of new applications or libraries that is there to create web application around your machine learning or data science model. So for example, solutions like, for example, if I go online and then look for Streamlit versus Flask versus, then you see Django dash, then versus, then you see Gradio. So basically, if you see the current space, you have all these different Python libraries that is there to help you create a web application around your machine learning solution. So it is very important for you to understand what is the problem that we have in the current space. The problem that we have in the current space is that you have either applications like Flask, which is usually used for a full stack web application using Python ecosystem, Flask or Django for that matter, or you have something like Streamlit, which is again a very good application library for you to create ML web application or even any web application of that sort. You can even build a Streamlit dashboard, analytical dashboard, and you can do everything with Streamlit, but you don't need the level of knowledge of Flask or Django, because Streamlit helps you wrap around all the important components in the form of Streamlit, and you have got Streamlit third-party components. So now when you see a world where you've got Streamlit and where you've got Flask and Django, now you would start wondering, what is the one that I need to pick? And because this course is about Gradio, I would like to highlight where does Gradio fit in this stack. So if you see, like, let's go to the examples available on Hugging Face Spaces. So this is Hugging Face Spaces where we have got a bunch of applications available. Okay. So now when you go to Spaces and then look for one of the most popular spaces, like these are the spaces of the week. So if I look at one of the most popular spaces, when I click it, it's loading. And you can actually see a Gradio application popping up. So this is built with Gradio. So you have an input text, and then you can do anything like multilingual summarization model, and then you have the ability to select languages, and then you have an output designed out. So this is the typical use case where you want to use Gradio over any other solution. So my pitch here is, let's say you want to build a startup, and that startup should have like high scalability, and then you want like a production grade application. Now this is the time probably you would start using Flask or Django, because that's what people do. So you have a Flask developer or a Django developer, and then you put together full stack development team, and then you can start productionizing your web application. Well, let's say like you are building the next Facebook, next Google, or whatever the next is, right? If you are in that condition, if you are in that state, then you know, for the web application that we are talking about, for the machine learning powered web application that we are talking about, you need a solution that is quite scalable, that can handle a lot of different things, not just only machine learning, but a lot of different things. So you would probably go with Flask or Django. And let's say like you are in a space where your solution is very confined to machine learning, especially data science machine learning. You want to build a dashboard, you want a Tableau alternative, you want easy wrappers around machine learning, you want like simple third-party components. I would probably prefer to go with Streamlit there. Streamlit is highly flexible. I love Streamlit, and Streamlit also makes it easier for you to deploy. Okay, so this is where Streamlit. Now in this process, in this entire process, let's say you want to build an MVP. What is an MVP? MVP stands for minimum viable product. This is a product that you would build to gain your customer confidence, to find out product market fit, to find out whether this is a product that people want to use. That is an MVP. The second thing is, while your machine learning team is creating models, you want to make sure that you have the best model in place. You have the best in class state-of-the-art model that is available for your customer. Which means you're going to build a lot of models, like you're going to do an experiment, probably Bayesian biases, Comet, Neptune, whatever solution that you use for experiment. But at the same time, you also want somebody to actually play with the model that you have built. So now we are talking about two cases. One, you want to build an MVP, minimum viable product for your startup. Or second, you want to build a web application that is used for iterating your machine learning solution. Now, if you are in this situation, either of these situations, I would strongly recommend using Gradio, because Gradio is specially built for this purpose, or at least in my opinion. Like, you could talk to Gradio's founder, and then probably that person might have a different opinion. But if you ask me, if you look at Gradio, if you are in a corporate setup, or if you are a hobbyist, machine learning hobbyist, or if you are somebody who is trying to build a web application or like a machine learning startup, like you could be an entrepreneur, you could be in academia, you could be a normal data scientist, like typical data scientist like me, or you could be a hardcore machine learning engineer who is working for Facebook artificial intelligence research or Google Brain or some kind of organization. You could be any of these things. Now, one of the things that you would do across all these different verticals is that you need to iterate on your machine learning application. You need to build an MVP before your startup looks like goes big. So in that case, I would strongly prefer Gradio, because Gradio gives me that flexibility to build something like very fast, very soon, without having to be worried about scalability, without having to be worried about deployment, without having to be worried about what is the CSS style looks like, what is the style, how do I have to change my style, like how does the headliner text should look like. I don't have to be worried about any of these things, because this is the phase where I'm going to, if I'm an entrepreneur, I'm going to probably focus on finding the product market fit, making more people use my product, and finding how they feel about it, like how do they feel about the solution. Or if I'm in academia, or if I'm in like building a machine learning solution, I would be probably more interested in finding the best model that I can serve my customers with. So if you are caught in this situation, so you're not building the next Facebook, you're not building the next Twitter, you are not even building an analytics dashboard. If you are in this situation, but still you want a web application that is to be created fast, that is to be created and shared with everybody, and that also has some flexibility to deploy permanently, then I would completely support picking up Gradio for this purpose, because I strongly feel Gradio is used for this purpose. So if you come across a question like Gradio versus Streamlit versus Flask versus Django anywhere on the internet, then probably my take on that is you have to use different products, different libraries for different stages of your product life cycle if you're an entrepreneur. So if you are in an MVP phase, I would close my eyes and then pick Gradio. If you're in a phase where I'm going to deploy my production grade machine learning solution, I would probably go with if it is only a machine learning solution. If it is only a machine learning solution, probably I would go with Streamlit, again like slightly an enhanced version of MVP. But if you want like a production grade solution, like let's say I'm building the next Facebook or Twitter something, then I would probably go with Django, something that is people usually use for production grade web application, something that can compete with the JavaScript ecosystem. So this is how I usually see this problem, but you can see the natural problem that we have here. The problem that we have here is not about which solution to pick, but generally if you want to build a web application, you don't want building a web application to be an overhead for your current problem. So your current problem is solving a machine learning problem, and you have to just solve that. You cannot sit and spend your time on learning how to connect your APIs within Java like a Flask. You cannot think about how to get your app routed to a particular link. You cannot do all those things. These are like roadblocks. These can inhibit your progress in your machine learning research or application or whatever you do, right? Whether it is machine learning research or applied machine learning. You don't want a solution that can stay in your way, inhibiting your progress in doing something greater than just building an application. You want a solution that should make it much easier, just like an icing on the cake, to enable you build a web application that can help you serve your your machine learning solution as a web application that the entire world can use. I would strongly pick Gradio. So if you are wondering why Gradio, then you have the answer in this video, which is to say that I would pick Gradio whenever I want to show machine learning demo, whenever I want people to use my models, whenever I want to build an MVP, and whenever I want people to actually play with the model and iterate on it and then finalize the best solution. So internal or external, customer facing or internal like machine learning engineers iterating, whatever this is a place where I would probably pick Gradio over any other existing solution, because every solution has its own place in the machine learning lifecycle or product development lifecycle. So for this particular phase, I would pick Gradio, and then we will learn more about Gradio as well in this course. A quick introduction to Gradio. What is Gradio? Gradio is the fastest way to demo your machine learning model with a friendly web interface so that anybody can use it anywhere in the world. So Gradio has this pitch that says, build and share delightful machine learning applications with anybody in the world. And what does it mean? It means if you have to demonstrate your machine learning model, you don't have to create a full stack web application. Rather, what you can do is you can wrap your function with Gradio, and then Gradio would be able to create a web interface for you. As you can see on the screen, it says with 5 lines of pure Python code, you should be able to create a UI around your machine learning application. Let's look at the example here. So let's look at this sketch recognition. So you've got handwriting recognition machine learning model or sketch recognition machine learning model, and then you want to create a web application around it for people to use it, for people to experience how good your machine learning model is. It could be either you are creating a demo for somebody else, or it could be that you want to yourself check the validity of your machine learning model, the efficiency of your machine learning model. So for you to do all these things, if you have a web application that you can play around with, that is a great way for you to learn how your model is performing. And typically it's not an easy task for you to do, and Gradio makes it really easy. If you see this code here for sketch recognition, the first step is import the library, then wrap your sketch recognition model, everything within a function, and use that function as a Gradio interface. And the input in your image, you can see that the input image, which is the input for the function, is been given as an input image here, and then output you're going to label the output, like display the output. So let's go ahead and then try to use this application and then see how it works. So you've got a canvas here, and this canvas has an attached output. So you have an input and you have an output. So let me clear this, and then you can see there is nothing here, right? So I'm going to clear this and then say 3. Okay, this looks like 3. Yeah, you can see that it has gone into the machine learning model, and the machine learning model has tried to figure out what is this, and then it has given you the output score. So this is the easiest way. Let me write something very ambiguous. Okay, so I'm going to write like this. Okay, it's for not very ambiguous. So if I do like this, yeah, so now it doesn't know whether I'm trying to write 9 or 6 or 4, whatever it is, right? So this is how you can actually see, okay, where are the places your machine learning model is not doing good, and then you can probably fix that. And that is one of the advantages of using Gradio, because Gradio lets you do that with a very simple interface. All you have to do is wrap around your machine learning functions, whatever you're doing within a main function here, sketch recognition, and use that function as an input to the Gradio interface. So that is your input, and all you have to do is import the Gradio library. And like that, you can see a couple of other examples that is there on the website. Question and answer, so you have got the question. So the idea here is that you can use it for computer vision task, just like this. You can use it for NLP task, like a question and answer generation. You can use it for speech recognition, like you can speech detection and translation, text to speech, speech to text. And also if you want to mark some segmentation within your image, you can still do that. So these are all the examples, and the one thing that common you would see across all these examples is that you import the library, you wrap it around the function, and then you have the Gradio interface, sketch recognition, question and answer, and everything you would see the same thing. It might be that the number of inputs differ, like for example in this case you have got 2 inputs, right? But the fundamentals are same. You do the same thing, and then it just helps you create that interface. Okay, so now we know that Gradio is an application like a Python library that can help you create easy web interfaces for your machine learning model that could be shared with anybody. Let's look at some of the companies that are using Gradio. So if you see the logos that are available here, you can actually see that almost all reputed companies that use machine learning model, you can see like Google is there, Amazon is there, Facebook is there, you can call it Meta, whatever you want. Cisco is there, Hugging Face is there, VMware, Siemens, like all these companies, and also educational institutes like MIT and Stanford, all of them are using Gradio. So this is again for you to gain a confidence that this solution is there to exist. It's not a solution that is just used by a bunch of hobbyists. Gradio is a solution that is being used at corporate level and academic level, and it is a way forward for you to demonstrate your machine learning model if you are not using Gradio. So what are the advantages of using Gradio? So first of all, Gradio is quite easy and fast to set up. All you have to do is install Gradio, and you all know if you're in the Python ecosystem, you know that all you have to do is pip install Gradio. And creating a Gradio interface requires only a couple of lines of Python code to your existing project, which means you don't have to change a lot of things in your existing code, because that shouldn't. The objective of creating a user interface for your machine learning model shouldn't be a roadblock in your machine learning itself. So that's the whole point of Gradio, right? So it's that you just have a machine learning model and all you wanted to do is create a UI. Now you don't have to deal with, a lot of APIs. You don't have to deal with a lot of new classes and a lot of new libraries. The whole advantage and the point objective of Gradio is that you keep your machine learning code as it is, and all you have to do is add a couple of lines of Python code, like pure Python code, and then that entire script is now turned into a UI, user interface, that anybody can play with. So that's the greatest thing. So fast and easy setup. That's a very good advantage that you have got. The first. The next thing is you can present this as part of a lot of things. For example, you can present this as part of your Jupyter notebook, or Python notebook to be precise, because now you have got a lot of different notebooks, right? Zeppelin notebook, Jupyter notebook, VS Code notebook. So you can present it as notebooks, like embed within notebook, or you can also present it as a separate web page. So you have the liberty, for example, if you're prototyping something on a Google Colab notebook, you can still create a Gradio interface within a Google Colab notebook, and Gradio will give you a URL which you can use to embed this Gradio UI, the web application, within your Google Colab notebook, which means, let's say you're going to publish a paper, right? So what does papers with code do? So you try to publish your paper with a code, but imagine you can publish your paper not just with code, but also with a web interface where people can play around with your model. Like, now this is going to prevent a lot of things. For example, let us say there is a bias in your model, and then you have no clue about the bias. But before the model becomes mainstream, somebody plays around with that and then come up with the bias, like identify the bias. And you can actually see a lot of people have utilized Gradio to find such biases available in image segmentation model, language models in the past about a particular community. So Gradio has been already used where biases have been identified. The second thing is adversarial attacks. When you have a machine learning model, you want to make sure that the models are not going to be attacked by some silly examples, or it's not prone to adversarial attacks. So for that, you cannot make sure everything, and then the community can always help you. And for that, again, like if you have your model and you believe it's a very good model, you believe it can do something good in the world, it's very important for you to make sure what kind of adversarial attacks this model is prone to. And for somebody to actually even try out that adversarial attack, they need something to play with, right? And Gradio can be that. So Gradio could be embedded within your Colab code, Google Colab notebook, Jupyter notebook, or any sort of Python notebook, and also as a separate web page. So you can just take the link and then share it with anybody. Like, it generates a public link for you, and then you can generate it with anybody. Imagine like you're trying to attend a machine learning interview, and you have been asked to build a model, and then instead of just rather giving just a model and like pickle file, you can actually build an interface and then share it with your potential employer. Or you're going to go to a conference and then you want to show something out of your machine learning, and instead of having the machine learning model on your PowerPoint presentation, you can also have it as a web interface where all the attendees on the conference can play with. So this has enormous potential, and that's the second biggest advantage of Gradio. Like you can present and share Gradio applications within Notebook, outside of Notebook, with anybody in the world. And then the third thing is, if you want to do permanent hosting, like until now we were talking about temporary hosting, you get a like a URL that is like an ngrok URL, and then you can share it with anybody. But if you want permanent hosting, today you have a very good option which is called Hugging Face Spaces. So Hugging Face Spaces is an initiative from Hugging Face, the machine learning company that used to be the NLP company, where you can deploy your Gradio interface for completely free, very easy, very simple. I've got a separate video about that already. I can link that in the YouTube description, but otherwise you can also check it out. At the end of this course, we will learn how to deploy a Gradio UI, Gradio app on Hugging Face Spaces, like even without even touching your local machine, completely coded on the web and also deployed completely, like seamlessly, and the workflow is really, really easy. So if you want permanent hosting, again, you have a very good option in the form of Hugging Face Spaces to host your Gradio application. Now that URL, you could share it with anybody. You can now share it with anybody permanently, not just like a temporary interface. So easy and fast setup. You can present and share the Gradio application with anybody in the form of notebook or web application. And finally, you have the ability to permanently host Gradio applications. these are really good advantages. And like I said before, letting people to play around with your model has a lot of advantages in a corporate world and also in an academia. One is, like I said, like you can eliminate bias, you can eliminate adversarial attacks. Second is like you can actually let people play around with something that you have built, which is the whole point of building something, right? So a lot of advantages of using Gradio. Gradio has very good interface with Hugging Face, Jupyter Notebook, Matplotlib, NumPy, PyTorch, scikit-learn, and a lot of other machine learning libraries or scientific stack in Python. And you can see already there are a lot of people who love using Gradio, and then they have endorsed Gradio to use Gradio as a solution to do a lot of things. For example, if you see the last example, it very clearly says, honestly, without Gradio, we wouldn't be doing a real-time AI trial. So in clinical trials, for them to try out their algorithm, they have used Gradio. And like with auto NLP, again, somebody has used Gradio, and you can actually see a lot of different use cases of how people have used Gradio and what all the things that people have used Gradio for. So if you are interested in taking your machine learning model and then making a full stack application, this course is for you. So we'll learn more about Gradio in the future section. In this section, we are going to learn how to build our first Gradio application. Previously, we learned about why do we need Gradio and what is Gradio and some of the advantages of Gradio. And so here we are going to start with coding. And to code, I'm going to basically use the getting started page on Gradio. This is quite a comprehensive page. If you don't prefer watching a video, I would strongly recommend you to check out this page. So to code, I'm choosing Google Colab interface. So I've created a Google Colab notebook. So all you have to do is go to Google and then type Google Colab. You would get an interface and you have to go to File and click New Notebook. Once you click New Notebook, you would get something like this, and then you can change the name of the notebook. So I have given the name here called Building Your First Gradio Web Application. Let me zoom it a little bit so that you can see it. After you have all these things, you can connect with the Google Colab notebook. Basically, Google Colab notebook is a Google machine that Google gives us to practice machine learning, like create applications, whatever, like create scripts, whatever you want. And this is a notebook interface hosted on Google Colab. So at this point, you can see like you have got a machine, like you have got a decent machine, and you can see the machine's usage here, like the RAM, disk, all these things. For our purpose, you can do the same thing on your local machine as well. You don't necessarily need Google Colab, but if you need Google Colab, you can use that as well. So the first step after you have the Google Colab interfaces, basically you will have certain basic Python libraries that are predominantly used in Python machine learning stack for just by default. For example, if you want pandas, you would already have pandas here. But if you want something that is not available there, then you need to install the library first. So in our case, we are going to install Gradio first. The first step is install Gradio. So I'm going to say pip, let me delete this. I want to say pip install Gradio. So first step is install the library Gradio, and you can see that it is getting started. If you face any issue in this, basically all you have to do is go here and then just restart runtime. Yeah, restart runtime. After you restart runtime, you can see the runtime gets restarted, and after the runtime is restarted, you would see it being connected to a machine. So this icon would change like from orange, so you are getting a new machine allocated. After this allocation, you can again install the library. So whenever you face an issue on Google Colab, all you have to do is go there and then restart your runtime. But make sure if you have anything temporary, like a temporary variable store, when you restart runtime, it may not be available for you. So let's wait for the machine's allocation to happen. So the first application that we are going to build would something look like this. So you give a name and then it would give an output. And then I'm going to explain you every single part of the code. So that's going to be this particular section where you would get to learn the Gradio web application. Once your connection is established, you can see this here. Then all you have to do is go ahead and then install the Gradio library. At this point, the Gradio library would get installed. It's a very lightweight library, so it shouldn't take a lot of time for you to install. So you can see that the Gradio library has been successfully installed. So after the library is installed, you can basically like, just for the sake of sanity, I'm going to clean my outputs, but yeah, you can just keep it as well, or you can install it quietly like this. So after the Gradio library is installed, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to build our first application. So the first thing that we have to do, as in every Python library, is import Gradio as gr. So you're basically importing the Gradio library here with the alias gr. The next thing that you have to do is you need a function. So a Gradio interface has three components: a function, input, and output. So first we need to define the function. So let's say we're going to define a function that says hello world. Okay, very typical machine learning stuff, programming. So where we are going to return saying hello and with probably an emoticon plus the name. Okay, so this is what we are going to do, and maybe like if you want, we can add something to this. So this is our function. If you want to see how the function works, what you can start doing is you can call the function and then pass on some name. Maybe you can say one little coder and then see whether it outputs. Okay, it outputs hello one little coder. So let's give some space so that we have this thing. So now our function is set. That the main function that you want to create, assume that this is your machine learning model. Right now you don't have a machine learning model, but it's like you could have a speech translation model, some machine learning model. So now that you have got your function, now let's start building our Gradio interface. So the Gradio interface, we want to, like, you can call it anything. You can, like, I can just call it interface. So I can say interface is equal to, I can say gr.interface. And within this, I'm going to have three main components. One is a function. Sorry, did I just call it? Wait. Yeah. One is a function. The function, what we want to call here is hello world. And then second thing is an input. So what kind of input do we want? We want to capture a text input, because that's what we're doing here, right? So text. And then the third is output. And what kind of output we want? We want the text output. So text input, text output, and also what is a function. So now let's define this interface. Okay, hello world is not defined. It's because I've made a stupid typo. Okay, hello world is defined, and then we have got the interface. Now that this is successfully ran, the next step for us is to launch the interface. Interface launch. And once you launch the interface, ideally you should be able to see the application somewhere here. So let's wait for it to launch. So a couple of things would happen behind the scene. So Google Colab Notebook, if you want the notebook to show, like if you want to debug, so you need to use debug is equal to true while launching. You have a public URL as well. So this link will expire in 72 hours. So if you want longer links, probably you need to contact Gradio support, which is not required for us. And then also, like, you have the app. Okay, so let's click the link, then go here and see how does it look like. It's loading, as you can see, and we have the same application embedded here as well. So we can see the same thing here as well. So you can see that you have the name and you have the output. So let's say I want to give one little coder and submit this, and then you can see hello one little coder. If I say hello Python with an emoticon, maybe hugging face emoticon, and then submit, so you get this. So basically you have something, you submit it, and while it is run, you can see something happening here. Click this, you can see that, right? So you can see that this is being processed, and then you can take a screenshot. If you want to flag it, you can do all these things. If you want to clear this input, you can clear this input. So these are like the basic default options that you get with Gradio, but again, this is not what entire Gradio is. And the same application, whatever we just opened with a URL, like, so the URL is useful for you to share it with your friends, potential employer, colleagues, like whoever is on the world, the planet, with internet connectivity. But if you want to share this web application as a Google Colab notebook or a Jupyter notebook or any notebook of that sort, so you can still do it, because it's the same thing is also embedded here. So I can go here and then say Gradio, okay, and I can put some magic wand, and when I click submit, so you can see that it has taken 0.00 seconds, like very minimal time, and then you can see the output as well. And if I want to take a screenshot of this, I can take a screenshot of this. So at this point, we have successfully managed to build our very first Gradio web application. And in the next section, we will learn how to improve this web application. Is this enough for our, let's say, computer vision problem? No, this is not enough. Is this enough where we need to have multiple input option? No, this is not enough. So the next section, we're going to learn the customizations of different components that are available in Gradio. But at this point, you should be able to code your very first Gradio web application. So congratulations to you. In this section, we're going to learn how to customize Gradio components, which means in the last section, you learned how to build a very simple Gradio application. And this section will help you to improve or enhance your application for your needs. So if you remember what we learned in the last section, a Gradio interface, a Gradio application, the interface, the core interface class, it actually has three main parameters. One is a function. The function is where the input is passed onto, and the output of the function, whatever you are returning from the function, is shown as an output. And if you remember, that's what you have. So you have got the input and you have got the output, and something goes between it, that is the function. So now we are going to learn, and finally, right, of course, after you do all these things, you're going to launch. So the basic skeleton of a Gradio application is you have the import statement, you have the function, then you have the interface, and then finally you're going to launch. Now we are going to learn how to customize these components like input, output, or also anything else that is available in such a way that you can build slightly more complex applications, because that's the whole point, right? Nobody is going to just take a text and then show something. I mean, like, you can build Gradio applications like that as well, but our whole point is to do something beyond this, and then we can learn how Gradio supports us or enables us doing that thing. And once again, like I said in the previous video, I'm basically using the material, the code that is available in the Gradio documentation. I strongly recommend you using this documentation. So if you have any concern on whatever I'm showing on the video, you should definitely refer the documentation, because that is exactly what I'm using as well. So let us get started and then try to understand how to customize our Gradio component. So currently our Gradio application looks like this. So we have a name and we have an output. Okay, so there is one name and one output. Like right now you can see the text box is not very big. What if you need a bigger text box? Very valid question, right? So what if you need a bigger text box? All you have to do is you have to create an input component. So I'm just copying the same Gradio interface that we already had, and instead of creating a new function, I'm just going to show you, like, we can keep the same function, which is the hello world in this case, but I'm going to show you how you can change the input. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to make this input slightly bigger, and for that we are going to use a new component from Gradio, which is Gradio, because we have imported Gradio as Gradio inputs. So we have inputs, and within that you can see you have a lot of inputs, like you have audio checkbox, data frame drop downs, you have a lot of things. And then the one that we are interested in is we're going to use a text box, and the text box takes an argument that says lines, number of lines. So let's say we want a 5 line, and then we can have a placeholder text. The placeholder text is enter your input here, and then we can now execute this and then say interface dot launch, and you should that's my bad. And then you can launch the interface. Like, you can see the interface. Now you can see there is a different URL altogether, but you can launch. So now you have a bigger name, so instead of having a smaller name. So if you want this to be more, like, a lot bigger, then you can again change the number of lines, and then you can have a bigger text box. So this is how you can customize the input. Okay, so you had function, we keep the same function. You had output, we keep the same output, but we just change the input from a simple text box, like a single line text box, into multi-line text box that gives us multiple lines of the code. So this way, this is a simple example for you to learn how to change the Gradio components, like how to change the Gradio component within the Gradio application, so that you can have multiple lines of input text, given that this is a text. Let us say we don't want text. Okay, let's say we don't want text, but we want an image. So in the next section, we'll learn how to build an image input. Instead of text input, we'll learn how to build an image input, and that image input will be used for some kind of machine learning once again. So for that, let's go to the Gradio documentation, and there is a very nice example that is given. We're going to take the same example, and then I'm going to explain you the components. So import Gradio as GR, same thing. NumPy is for image processing. We are just going to apply a sepia filter. Okay, so we are going to take an input image, and then we are going to apply a sepia filter, and then that's let's leave this function because this is just going to apply a sepia filter. So the most important part for us is, instead of having a text like as in here, which is here, right? Instead of having a text box, we are going to have an image as an input, and then we are also giving the shape of the image. Okay, and the output is also supposed to be an image. And once you run this, you can see the text box, like ideally the box. So you can click and upload it, or you can drop down the image. So if you have downloaded the image somewhere, then you can drop the image here, and then that will work. So I can show you a sample image, and then we can see how it works. So I've selected an image from my folder, and you can see the image is available. So I'm going to click submit, and then you can see that the sepia filter has been applied. So basically, instead of having a text input, you're getting an input image, and also the output format is an image. So again, this is not named document. Like if you want named, again you can say my function is equal to this, my input is equal to this, my output is equal to this. But if you don't want that to happen, like if you just want to give this like in the same order, you can do the same thing as well. Like you have the Gradio interface, your function, your input and output, and in this case input is not text, but it is an image, and you get that from inputs class. So inputs image, and then output is also image. So we have successfully learned in this section, how to use Gradio to build an image application, like an application that takes image as an input and also image as an output. So now that this is quite interesting, right? So we first saw text, we then saw image, but now the question is, what if we want to work with tabular data? So in the next section, we are going to learn how to build a Gradio application that takes tabular data as an input. And once again, like I said, we're going to refer the Gradio documentation. So Gradio documentation has a very nice example where you work with a tabular data. So there is a tabular data, and that tabular data has been taken inside, and then some kind of data transformation, and not to the ETL level, but some data transformation is happening. And then you can see there is an input data frame. So there is a data frame as input. So this is again used just for an example, but you could be reading the data frame from your CSV file, and you could be displaying as well. But the important thing that you have to note here is you have an input component called data frame. So like you had text box, like you had image, now you have an input format called data frame, and also output. So you have like data frame as an output, you have plot, and you have NumPy. So you have input, and you have output, and you have the function, and we can add a description as well. So this is something that we have not seen before, where we didn't see description, but we have seen a description. So let's launch it. Once again, it's loading, and then you can see that you have an input data frame. If you click submit, you can see output 1 is a table. So you can go to the function and see it's returning 3 things. One, you are returning a tabular data frame. Second, you are returning a plot, and third, you are returning a NumPy array. So you have an output, you have a plot, and then you have a NumPy array. So if you want to change the value, again, like go ahead and then just change something, run it, and then you would see, like again, ideally in an ideal world, you would not define the data frame as it is. Probably you would be loading a CSV file or something, and that's what, like when you load a CSV file, if you have a different value, click submit, and then you have 3 outputs: output 1, output 2, output 3. So you have 3 outputs. If you want to change it, let's say like you don't want 3 outputs, you just want a plot, we can go here, delete whatever we are returning, and then we can come back here, also delete the output format. So we have only plot here, and then run this again. Once you run this thing, you would have only the input and output, and then once I click submit, you can see the output chart itself. So again, you are not specifying where the output should be shown. So if you had noticed, when we had more than one input, when we had more than one output, Gradio itself managed to display output one by one. But typically if you're building an application using any other existing tool, so you have to manage that. You have to manage how this is shown. You have to manage whether it is responsive or not. But here you don't have to be worried about it. Once again, you have the output here. If you want to change, again, you can change. Again, like we saw before, if you want to take a screenshot, you can take a screenshot, or right click and save the image. Like whatever you want to do, you can basically do. And this is how exactly you have an input data frame. You have an input data frame and you have an output plot as a chart. Okay, so far in the previous sections, we have learned input text, input image, and now we learned about input data frame, and that's quite helpful. So these are the three main formats that typically a data scientist or machine learning engineer would be using. Again, you can have audio, right? So the potential is enormous. Like if you want audio, all you have to do is go here, let's say inputs, and you can see audio. So you can have audio as well. Like you can have audio and a lot other things. But if you ask like a typically a machine learning engineer or a data scientist, image, text, and these are like a few valuable things, a few valuable formats. Tabular format, image, and text are few valuable formats that typically data scientists, machine learnings use a lot. So we have learned how to create a Gradio application, text application, how to create a Gradio image application, and also how to create a Gradio application that takes a tabular data as an input. So now we have explored different components like image, text, and data frame. In the next section, we are going to learn how to use these different components and also have different kinds of input and more than that. So let's see in the next section how to use multiple inputs and outputs in your Gradio application. So far in the previous sections, we learned how to build a simple Gradio web application. We also learned about customizing components like different formats, exploring different formats like image, text, and tabular data. So in this section, we are going to learn how to use multiple inputs, not different types of inputs, but multiple inputs. So not every time you want to use only the same input, right? So for example, if you see here, you have one text box. If you see this example, you have a bigger text box. And if you see this example, you have got one image. But what if you are in a situation where you need to take multiple input from the user and you want to process it in such a way and then give some output? So for that, what we're going to do is we're going to make a simple function, just like our hello world example. And then we are also going to learn how to handle multiple inputs in a Gradio application. Once again, like I say in every section, you can always explore the documentation for this part, and it is quite comprehensive. And the examples that I've taken for this code is again from the documentation. So let's start from scratch. If you have not even seen that whatever we did before, so we are importing Gradio as GR. So that part is done. So the next thing is we need to create a function. We need to create a function that can do something. So what we can do in this case is we can say, let's calculate BMI. Okay. I don't necessarily know the formula for BMI, but I'm just going to take a shot. BMI, and let's say we want to take BMI for a person, and then we want to take height, and then we want to take weight. Okay. And then we are going to calculate BMI now. So, and then we are going to also thank the person based on the BMI. So the first thing that we need to do is let's get the BMI calculation, BMI formula, let's say, and then okay, basically it is weight divided by height square, and the height should be in kilograms, the weight should be in kilograms, and the height should be in meters. So what we can do is we can say, okay, first let's do the formula and then we can have a description. So BMI is equal to BMI val is equal to height weight divided by height square. Okay, use the parenthesis so that you don't have confusion about anything. So now that at this step we are calculating BMI, so we are going to say print, and then we're going to say hello, and the name of the person, which is in this case is name, plus something, and a new line, and your BMI is, and then we're going to say str of BMI val. Okay, let's run the function. Oh, I didn't return anything, right? So I should have ideally returned this, Let's run this and then try to give the value. So I'm going to say one little coder, and the value which is 120, and then weight is like, let's say 50, and the BMI is 0.334. I have definitely messed up this formula, which is kilogram weight divided by height square, and height should be in meters, right? Height should be in meters in the sense 1 centimeters. Okay, 1.2 maybe. Yeah, so we have got a BMI, so approximately our formula works fine. So BMI part is done. So the next important step for us to do is, so make sure that you have 3 inputs and you have 1 output, right? So if you want 2 outputs, we can still do that, but right now we are exploring only 1 output. So what we're going to do now is we're going to say, okay, interface is equal to Gradio interface of, and then we're going to say function is equal to BMI. That part is simple. Inputs is equal to, what are the inputs we want? The first thing that we want is a text input. The second thing we want is a checkbox. The second thing is, let's say in this case, a slider, maybe gr.inputs.slider, and the slider value goes from 0 to, let's say 100, and the label, if you want to add a label, say height. Okay, and then you're going to have another slider, and this slider is for weight in kg and height in meters. Okay, and this should be ideally 200, I think. Yeah, now this is done. The next thing is we need to define the output, and the output in this case is a simple text. We are not dealing with multiple items, so simple text should be fine. Define this, it's worked. Now interface dot launch. So technically you can actually do launch here also, like if you want, like if you don't want to define the interface in a separate step, you can do that, but yeah, just for the sake of explicitity, I'm just doing it here, and then I'm going to launch it. Once we launch it, again the same thing happens. So it says like debugging is equal to true, like all the same examples. So I've got a name, let's say name is one little coder, and then height is somewhere like this, weight is somewhere like this, weight in kilogram, height is, let's say here, and then submit. You can see that the BMI has been calculated. Like forget about what the formula is doing right now at this point. Maybe what we can do is, it looks very ugly for us to show this thing, so maybe we can round it off, then we have to import. Okay, I'm not dealing with rounding off at this point. So you have hello, the name, BMI, and then the value. So at this point you can see that we have successfully managed to get 3 inputs, and then we are also outputting 1 output. But what if you suddenly think, okay, instead of just having 3 inputs, let me have 1 more extra output. Okay, and now probably that output is something like a emoticon. Okay, if the BMI is less than this, let's say there is an emoticon. If the BMI is greater than this, let's say another emoticon. So result emoticon is equal to, again for simplicity, we can use, or I can actually use this. Okay, so just use happy face if BMI val is less than like maybe 30. I don't know, so don't take health advice from this. Otherwise keep a sad face. How do I keep a sad face? This is a sad face. Okay, this is a sad face. So now we have a result emoticon. So now what you can do is you can result this emoticon as well as part of this. So we have one, okay, we have one entire string. If you want to make it easier, you can see output string is equal to this, okay, and then you have the emoticon. So I'm going to say output string and then result emoticon, and then I'm going to run this function. I'm going to call the function to see. Okay, so my BMI is terrible, so it's just giving me this sad option. So now I can come back again and then specify that my first output is a text. Again, I want to do text for the second output as well, right? But if you want a different output, you can still do it. But in my case, I want text output as well. So run it, come back here, launch it again. And once you launch it, it's going to give you the application. And then you can see, okay, name is, let's say Mars, maybe. Height and, okay, just and weight is 58 something, 60. Submit it, and then you can see it's a happy face. The reason we have a happy face is primarily because the BMI is less than 30. So if I go back to the same example, like for example, height should be in meters, right? I should have ideally divided this because height is in centimeters. Let me add centimeters and then divide the height by 2. Okay, height by 100. Okay, run this and then try the code. Run this, try the code. Why am I getting okay, it's because of order of precedence. My code is getting messier with all the parentheses, but that's okay. So now I have defined height in centimeters, weight in kilograms, and come back and launch it again. Then maybe this time we can say Mars and Jupiter, other names. Height in centimeters. Okay, I didn't give centimeters. It didn't get updated. That's okay. Submitted. Okay, the app did not refresh. One last time. Let's refresh this. Launch it. And height in centimeters. Yeah. One little coder. Height in centimeters. 160. And then when you say BMI is 32 and you are sad, when your BMI is less, okay, you're still sad. Okay, let's reduce the weight. And then ideally now you're happy because your BMI is less than 30. So technically we have managed to build an application with 2 outputs. Again, if you want to change the like name of the output, again, that's something that you can change within your output as well. So basically what we have managed to do here is we have taken multiple inputs and we have done multiple outputs. And this is quite important because in a lot of cases, for example, let's say you're doing neural style transfer. Usually for neural style transfer, you would have multiple inputs and one output. So you need to know how to do multiple inputs and multiple outputs, and that's quite simple. You have to match the number of arguments that you're getting in your function with the number of inputs, and all you have to do is the type of input. So one of your input could be a slider, one of your input could be a text, another input could be a number, another input could be an image. So you can have these multiple formats as well. It's not just like numbers and all these things. Like for example, let's say like suddenly we are deciding that we want to add a checkbox. Okay, and I want to add something new, that is feeling. Okay, and based on feeling I want to say something. Okay, so we'll say if feeling is true, okay, then we'll do text is equal to happy. Okay, and we are going to send feeling also. Sorry, text. We have to send the text. Okay, now this one I'm going to make a boolean out of it. Okay, and how do I make a boolean out of it, or a checkbox? So my last attribute here is gr.inputs.check. Did I get checkbox? Yes, checkbox. And you can see when I want to make a checkbox, I have to specify default is false, right? Default is false, and the label is you're feeling today, and then everything else is fine. So we have the text as well. So we have the third text. Run it, run the function again, and then launch it. Now at this point, technically you should have one extra checkbox. So checkbox is selected, something, height, weight, selected. There is an error. There is an error. And what is the error? Okay, so we have got 3 inputs, 1, 2, 3, 4. I got 4 inputs, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I think the problem is because if, okay, let me even do this. Text is equal to if feeling else sad. Okay, and let me run this and then try with this. So we have 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. Okay, that's done. And then let's run this. Let's launch, and then let's see this thing. So let's see if we can get rid of the error. It's successfully worked, right? So you have output 1, output 2, output 3, and then you can disable the feeling and then run it again, you get sad. So basically you have managed to add a new type of input without any problem. So you have multiple types of input, multiple formats of input, and also multiple formats and types of output. That is done. So because we have got a bug, maybe this is a very good opportunity for us to try out the debugging option. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the same mistake that we did before, and the mistake was just using like this, right? So this was a mistake that we had, and there is a way for us to identify using this. For example, we can do like this, but if it is false, it would probably throw an error, like you can see the error. But let's forget this kind of debugging for a moment, and then let's see if we can find a way to debug here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say debug is equal to true, and then launch it here. Did it just say, okay, sorry, I have to add debug is equal to launch, so that was silly of me. So I'm going to do debug is equal to launch. When I do this thing, it's going to launch with the debugging option. Okay, so it says this cell will run indefinitely so that you can see the errors and logs. So if you want to turn it off again, you have to go back and then say debug is equal to false. So what we are going to do now is we are going to say something, and then we are going to select some value, and then click. So your value is good, so you have got all the output. The problem arises when you have false value. When you submit now, there is an error. Okay, so you can see that there is an error. Now that error, because we have enabled debugging mode, that error is displayed here, which wouldn't have been displayed otherwise. So now you can see the error local variable text reference before assignment. So which means it's saying like it's the same error that you would get when you are doing like a REPL or a interactive environment. So this will again help you to debug. So I've just taken the liberty of making a mistake to explain you that that this is there. So all I can do is I can just add an else, or I can just go with list comprehension, then fix this, come back again in debugging mode, right? Come back again in debugging mode, do interface, and you can see all these are not running because this launch is still running. So I'm going to stop it, everything is ran, and then run this again, and then try this out. But now the debugging mode is still true. So you have the modes set. True is happy, done, and false is error again because we didn't run it. So ideally you understand the point. The point here is once you have a mistake or a bug, an error, it's very important for you to debug it the same interface that you have. You don't want to juggle between a lot of different interfaces. So the easiest option for you to do that is debug is equal to true. So once you do debug is equal to true, then you will be able to debug the file. So we'll have a slightly extended debug session in the next section, but if you simply want to debug, this is your way to debug. So in this section we just learned how to improve our Gradio web application with multiple inputs, multiple outputs, same format, different format, and we also played around with a bunch of options for us to see how it works. And we also made a deliberate mistake to understand how do we go about debugging. So in the next section we'll also learn slight extension of how more to debug or log what is happening there. In this section we are going to know a little bit more about debugging your Gradio web application, and also Gradio has a nice feature called flagging, and we are going to look more into that. First, let's start with debugging. In the previous section at the end, you might have seen that we tried to debug. So extending that, we are going to see what kind of errors that we might face and then some debugging options that we have. The first thing that you need to make sure whenever you are building your Gradio application is that the function that you are using for your Gradio application, the number of arguments in your function should be equal to the number of elements in your inputs, and also the number of arguments or number of items that you are returning should be equal to the number of items or elements in your output. So this is the first thing, very important thing, that you need to make sure that it is right. The second thing is the type of the argument. For example, here name is a text, make sure the input is text. Here if you have an output text, again make sure that it is an output text. So whatever the type is, make sure it is that type, so that you know the types have not messed up, because you are not going to compile anything and check. So it's always good to have this validation. Like if you are creating a checklist of test cases, this is something that you should do. And let's say that you have done all these things right, and then you have built an application, but still if you want to validate whether your application has any error, then this is how you have to debug it. And the way if you want to debug is, basically you have to enable debug is equal to true. So debug is equal to true is just a function, like an extra argument that will help you enable display error messages. If you want error messages to be displayed while the Gradio application is run, which is going to run without stopping, then you need to enable debugging, like debug is equal to true. So let me quickly give you an example, and then we'll move on to the next section. So if you see this thing, for example, here we have got height and weight and filling, right? So by default, let's say if I don't have debug is equal to true, okay, I have this thing here. I'm going to give some name, right? And then I'm going to have something here. And if I submit, it worked. But let's say if I keep it like this and submit, you see an error. Now, do you know why this error is happening? No, of course you wouldn't know why this error is happening, even though like probably if you're a math whiz, you would have probably predicted it by this time. But yeah, let's assume that you are an average programmer, so you don't know why the error is happening. And that's why it's important for us to enable debugging like this. And then after we do that, so it says the cell will indefinitely run, like we saw before. So it's going to run all the time, so that you can try a lot of different things and then have the error log in place. So now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put the name and then keep it zero, and then submit. So it shows error. The moment it shows error, it's going to also show the error message. And the error message here is 0 division error. So float division error. So basically what has happened here is that this is a thing that you wouldn't have probably anticipated when you created this application, because now you're dividing weight by height, and then height cannot be 0 because you're going to get divisible by 0 error. And what is the ideal solution? You can go to your code, you can change everything, you can handle the test conditions, or if you want to simply make a change, you can just come back here in the slider, you can start with 1 so that your user can never go to 0. So run this and run this, and now again most likely you are starting with 1, so even if somebody submits something, there is no way that they're going to hit 0 in this case. So this is again a very typical example of how do you find out an error and then fix an error using Gradio's debugging method. So if you want the debugging method to be enabled, and a lot of other things. So basically the same way you debug your Python programming code, so you can debug your Gradio application in a very similar way with debug is equal to true enabled while you are launching the application. Now that is said, so the other important thing that I just talked about is flag. I just told at the start of this section that flag is another very interesting case. So what is flag? The flag is a button that helps you flag any erroneous or unexpected behavior in the output. So you could be running a model and then suddenly you see something weird, you can use flag. You could have, like, let's say image segmentation model, and then you're trying to find out which images have done well, which images have not done well. So you can just click flag whenever you see the images have not done well, and you could use this for a lot of purpose. But what happens when you click flag? That's the most important question, right? Let's say you have an internal machine learning team and you have created an application and given it to them, and that team, whenever they find out something weird, let's say some bias, something unexpected happening in the model behavior, or even in this calculation something weird is happening, right? So now we want to flag the team that has created this application. So what does it mean? What does the team see when we create flag here? So let's do a couple of flags, then I'll let you know. So first there is a flag, so let's do one more thing, and then we'll say another flag. Okay, so we have flagged, at this point we have flagged 2 items in this case. So now what happens here is when you create flag, ideally there is a flagged folder that gets created. So I've stopped it, and then if I go back, there is a flagged folder. So when we go to the folders, let me refresh the folder, and you can see there is a flagged folder and there is a log here. Let me copy the path of this folder, come back here, and then use pandas to show you what is there. Import pandas as pd.read_csv in the path, and then you can see the instances. What is the name, what are the inputs that were given, and what was the output, and these are flagged. So this is to help the machine learning team or ML ops team, whatever the team that is going to look into the model issues, to check what are the items that are flagged by the users or internal testing or whatever that is, right? So whenever you flag something, there is a new entry that is made here, and that entry is used in the future to evaluate the model or the performance of the application. So right now what you saw is an application that just had text. So now what happens when you have images? What happens when you have images, right? For example, we had an application like this. What happens when you have an image like this? When you have an application that has images, both the input and output images get stored. Unlike this, where you have text, where you have everything in tabular data only, and you don't have anything else, right? So if you go to the folder, you wouldn't see anything else other than .csv. But when you have images, the actual images or any other media type for that matter, the actual media content itself is stored inside that folders, making it easier for you to evaluate what has gone wrong. This is a very important aspect. Again, when you're going to use Gradio for iterating your machine learning model or improving your machine learning model, this is quite important and useful to use. And again, a lot of people who build Gradio might not be very aware of this thing because it just exists there. But yeah, efficiently using flag can improve your machine learning model, can help you identify there is a bias. Like for example, let's say you've put together a machine learning model and then you've created a Gradio web application, you have published it on Hugging Face Spaces or somewhere. You can explicitly tell your users saying that if you find anything interesting, weird, then please go ahead and click flag, because that will help us improve the model, eliminate the biases, or be more robust. So you can tell this explicitly in the description, like you have a description, right? Like you can write a description here like this, and then flag if you find any erroneous output. Okay, so I can run this, and then let me disable it, and then it can run. When it runs, it will description flag if you find any erroneous output. So having this message very clearly as part of the application could help people understand that when they see something wrong, they have to flag, and that comes to you as a very well structured data which you can use in the future to fix your machine learning model or do anything that you want to do with the data. So one aspect of debugging in Gradio is actually using the debug is equal to true, but I'm also including this in this section because I believe that if your machine learning model doesn't work well, if your machine learning model is doing something semantically wrong, not syntactically but semantically wrong, only the user who is actually seeing the output can tell you that thing, and that human intervention could be made. The flag could be raised using this flag button, and that could be extremely useful in a lot of different cases. One thing that you would want to note when you're talking about flag is so right now the flag content is in the actual folder, like the current folder, but if you want it to be in a different folder, then you have a flagging directory. So you can have a separate directory, you can specify a separate flagging directory, and that will probably enable you to have this flagging like flagged content in a different directory altogether if you want it to be in a different directory. But otherwise everything is good here. Flagging is extremely helpful. This is how you do debugging, and these are some things that you should pay more attention to. And in the next section we will learn some quirks and nuances about Gradio application. So far we have learned all basic and very important things about building a Gradio application. So in this section we are going to learn how to enhance or improve your existing Gradio application that looks better, that does better, it has better user experience. And to start with, we are going to talk about examples in Gradio application. So what is examples? For example, if you have a Gradio application that looks like this, sometimes the user might get confused. What do I have to give here? What do I have to do here? What do I have to do here? And to avoid this confusion, usually in user experience, if you see a lot of existing tools, like I can quickly show you a tool that I came across recently, which is called shell.how. When you go here, it's still loading. But when you see this thing, you can see there are suggested commands. So these are like examples. So instead of somebody trying to figure out what to type here, a good user experience would always be very intuitive, where people can just click it and then select it. In a very similar user experience principle, Gradio also has got something called examples, and I'm going to show you how to do examples in this section right now. So let's start with example, and example is quite easy. What do you want to do with example? For all the input, you are going to give an example value. So I'm going to come here and then say, after outputs, I'm going to say examples. Okay. And here I'm going to select what all examples I'm going to give there. Like the examples are nothing but predefined answers. So I'm going to have a list, and within that I'm going to have another one, and the first one is, let's say, one little coder name, and then the second one is, let's say, 100, and then the third one is, let's say, 50, and then the fourth one is true. Okay, so this is one example. The next one I'm going to copy, let's say Mars 120, 30, 20, yeah. And third example, like we'll stick to 3 examples. Let's say moon, and then 200, or maybe we can use even moon. And the third one, 50 kilos, and then false. So we have 3 examples. Now when we run this application, oh, invalid syntax, because we didn't add the comma there, that's why it's invalid syntax. When we launch this application, at this point you would see this application being launched with examples. So you can see there are 3 examples. So when you have a Gradio application that looks like this, if you don't know, like, let me even open this Gradio application separately so that it's easier for us to see. So when we have this Gradio application, it might be difficult at first for somebody to know what to fill. So what they can do is, we have examples. All they have to do is click this application and then submit, then they'll get the output. Click this example, click submit, and then get the output. So it becomes very easy for anybody to click something and then get an output rather than themselves typing something. So this is very important for a very intuitive user experience, and thanks to Gradio for offering this, because this is what a lot of good web applications, especially to give intuitive user interface, does. So whatever the type is, like if you have an image, you can give image as an example. If you have tabular data, just like us, like not tabular data necessarily, but text and the numerical data and Boolean values, you can have this. So for whatever type of data that you have, you can specify examples very simply just by defining another parameter here that takes different lists. Like you have multiple lists, multiple examples. You don't want to also give like 10-20 different examples. Example should be like 1 or 2. In this case, we have taken 3 examples. So example is a very, very important way for us to improve the user experience of the Gradio application. So that is one important thing. So you need to know when to use example and how to use example, and that's what you just learned. The second thing is, what if you don't want to click submit all the time? What if you want it to be reactive? So if you have seen Streamlit, if you have seen RShiny, or if you have seen even Tableau, like there are a couple of instances where you can select an option and then suddenly it is reactive. So suddenly you would see the output rather than somebody going and clicking. And for that, within this, like within the Gradio interface, you have an argument called live. If you say live is equal to true, currently by default live is equal to false. If you say live is equal to true, then you don't have to submit every time, and that's what we're going to see now. I'm going to disable the example. Okay, let me keep the examples and say live is equal to true, right? And then let's run it, and let's run it again. Is it going to restart? I'm not sure, but that's okay. So I have this thing here, right? I have this thing here, but you can see that there is no submit button at this point. So submit button is gone because it's live. So all I have to do is I can go here and then select it, and then you can see the output. I have to go here and let me zoom out a little bit. Yeah. All I have to do is go here, select it, you can see the output. I can go here, select it, you can see the output. select it, you can see the output. So basically you are eliminating one extra step. So this is useful in some situations, not in some situations. For example, if you have a situation where a model inference takes a lot of time, then you wouldn't want this to happen, because if somebody like by mistake clicks something, still it would start processing. So you would want that explicit submit button in those kind of cases. In cases where you, like for example this case, right, we don't necessarily want somebody to click submit. In cases like this, you can, like for example, you change the slider, it would change. So in cases like this makes sense, but in some other cases it may not make sense. But live Gradio application is another useful feature, because it again improves user experience, where a explicit submit action button action is not required. So if you think an explicit action like submit is not required, then you can then you can actually have then you can actually have this thing in place, which is live application. So the next way to improve user experience is, we discussed in the previous section about flagging. So flagging can also have multiple options. For example, instead of just simple flagging, we can say flagging options equal to, so we can say yes, no, maybe, something like that. Okay, and then run it, and now when you run this thing, you can actually see flagging options. So you, instead of, like for example, let me click this thing, and you have 3 flagging options. All you have to do is hover your mouse on it, you have 3 flagging options. So yes, no, maybe, and these values might also get recorded. So flagging, again, instead of keeping a simple flagging, for example, let's say you want to build a text annotation, some like simple annotation tool. So now all they have to do is, like, you can have all your entities here, and then you can ask somebody to annotate. So as simple as that, even if you have image or whatever that is, or maybe like a prediction is right or wrong or not right. So you can again use this to actually do unit testing and flag not only when something is wrong, but also you can use this to kind of label things on the go while you are building your machine learning model. Again, flagging options is extremely helpful, because you can use it for something more than what flagging is supposed to do. So flagging is very, very helpful. So far we have seen examples, so far we have seen live application, and also we have seen different options in flagging. The final thing that I wanted to highlight here, which I'm not going to show you right now, is using a state. So what is a state? Let me quickly show you state here. So Gradio getting started. I'm going to copy the example from Gradio page. So what is a state? So one thing that you know very clearly is that every time you click submit in your Gradio application, the entire app resets. I think that's something that we all can agree. There is no persistence of data here. So anytime you submit something, the data is reset. What if you want to have persistence of data? What if you want to use a data point or a data from the previous before submitting to the next instance? And that's where state comes into picture. And state is quite common again in full stack development. So if you want to create a state that persists outside of a single function call, which means you need a global variable, right? So you need something that is outside this function, like outside the function that you have, this function. If you have a use case like that, then you need to set state. And chat message is a typical example, right? Why chat message is a typical example? Somebody sends hello, and then you reply hello, and somebody sends how are you, you're going to say I'm fine. Now in the application, you want all these messages to be in there. You don't want every time to initialize with empty message, because you want the previous data to be there. And that is where state is quite helpful, because you want the data to persist across multiple submits. Okay, so let's look at this demo quickly, and then we can see how it works. So quickly see the demo of state. I'm running this thing, and again, like I said before, this is an example straight out of Gradio documentation. So message is hello, and then I'm going to submit it. You can say hello, don't know. So it says the next message is how are you, and then I can see how are you. Okay, so you can see the response. You can see the response here, right? So, and this is important because you want the message to persist as well. So that's why state is very important, and you can refer Gradio doc. I'm not getting deep into it because that is again a topic for a separate section altogether. So to avoid that, I'm just saying that you can go to the get started page in Gradio. Also you can check in the documentation about state. So this is what the purpose of state is, to have something beyond the function, like to create like a global variable outside the function call, so that even when you load this thing, there is persistence. And the very best use case that you can think of is, you want to load a large model, and every time you want to load the model, you don't want it to be refreshed. If you have the model being loaded inside this, you don't want it to get refreshed all the time. So you want to load the model outside the function, and then inside the function you do everything else like inference, right? So that is a very good use case, and states could be used there. So explore state more, and that could be really, really helpful for you in improving your Gradio application. So if you need a variable that should be persistent outside the function call, then set state is the function that you should set state, and get state is the function that you should be looking at to store and retrieve the persistent data that you have created. So that is state. And the final, this is state done. So we have seen examples, we have seen live Gradio, and we have seen state. And the very final thing that I want to talk about improving your Gradio application is Gradio themes and Gradio CSS. So Gradio application, by default you would see something that looks like this. I'm going to remove the flagging options. I'm going to remove the description. I'm going to even remove the live option. Okay, so by default you would see the Gradio application that looks orangish, which is in line with the Gradio color. But sometimes you want something else, right? So sometimes you want to try something else, like you want a different color combination, you want a different theme. So Gradio has two options for that for you. One, Gradio has got theme, so quickly showing theme. So you have the default option, you have Hugging Face option, you have Grass option, Peach option, Dark option. So you have got different themes. The second one is, rather than using the existing theme, the theme that is available on all these themes, you yourself can actually create custom CSS. So you can use custom CSS option to create theme. And that is again another important feature if you want to try out something. So we are going to explore these two options now. So theme and custom CSS. First, let's start with theme. So I have a Gradio application that looks like this, and maybe you know what, I can do side by side. Oh, it doesn't let me do side by side. Okay, I thought I can just show it side by side. It doesn't allow me to do that view. That's okay. So first thing that I want to do is I want to enable a theme. Okay, so theme is equal to, what is the theme name? Let's start with the Hugging Face, and then we'll go to some dark theme. When I run this thing and run this, you would see the theme color changing. You can see now the theme has changed. Like this is the Hugging Face theme, right? So it's cleaner, means I would at least say like it's cleaner if you want. No offense to existing default Gradio theme, but yeah, it's cleaner. If you want a different theme, let's say like you want a dark theme, then you can just go like dark peach or dark default. Maybe we can do dark Hugging Face. Let's try how it looks. Dark. Okay, run this and run this, and then see how does it look. Oh, this is quite nice. This is again a very pleasant dark theme. So you can see the font is white in color. You select something, you submit something, you have everything in white in color. So this way you can play around with the theme, right? Hugging Face theme. Let us say you have played around with this thing, but there is one thing that you don't like necessarily, and you want to change that, and that's where your CSS is going to help. So one thing that you can do with CSS is, you can, for example, let's say you want to change the background color to something. So I can go here, say CSS is equal to, and then I can add the CSS. I'm going to use multi-lines just to keep it easy for me, and then I'm going to say background color is gray. Okay, let's run this, and then you would see the change in the color. Ideally it didn't change. Okay, let me disable the theme and then see. You can see after I disable the theme, because the theme overrides the CSS, so after you disable the theme, you can see the color of the background is changed. Like if you want, let's say, like a different color altogether. Let's say you want let's say yellow, maybe terrible option, but again just for demo purposes, if you want a background color to be yellow in color, you can again change it. In the previous section, we learned how to improve the user interface and user experience of our Gradio web application. So we learned about examples, we learned about live mode, we also learned a little bit about state, and then finally we learned about themes and CSS, custom CSS, to redesign our Gradio web application. In this section, we are going to learn how to share the Gradio application with anybody in the world, and also the most important aspect is, do you want everybody to see that, or do you want to add an authentication page before anybody could access your Gradio application? So the first thing is, by default, when you launch your Gradio application, you would get a URL like this, and that URL stays for 72 hours. So you can get this URL and then share it with anybody in the world, and then they can use the URL for 72 hours. But if you want to make it explicit, there is an attribute called share. So if I say share is equal to true, whether to create a publicly shareable link from your interface. So you can say share is equal to true, and that will also give you the same URL if you want. And then the next thing is, you don't have to only share the app, but also you have the ability to share the API, which is something that not again a lot of people would do. So APIs are very helpful. For example, if you want to integrate this, let's say you have a JavaScript based stack available and you want to integrate this machine learning solution inside JavaScript based solution, the easiest way for you to do is to use an API. So what Gradio also gives you is the API with also some starter code. So for example, for this particular app, when I click this view the API, you can see that there is an API here, and then that API says like this interface takes 4 inputs, returns 3 outputs. The URL endpoint you can copy, and these are the input types, these are the output types, this is how the payload is going to look like, and this is how your response is going to be. And also you have a couple of examples where you have a Python code, you have a curl code, and you have a JavaScript code. So if you want to check it, you can go here and then click post, and then you would get the response yourself. Or if you want to try it on your Google Colab as well, you can come back here, run this, and then see, okay, true, we have to say true, and then see you have the output. So the time it took, the data input, the data output, and then again the time it took. So if you have multiple calls, then you can see the average time, otherwise it would mean the same. So basically, not just the app that you can share with the world, but you can also share the API where anybody can make a call to the endpoint and then get the result that they want. Instead of saying get the result, I should say post the response, post the request, then get the response. Yeah, whatever it is. So one, take this link, share the link with anybody, they would be able to access the app. Second, add /API or the API link that you can get from here, and then share it with anybody, they can use it. That's second. Now that we know how to share a Gradio application with the entire world, the next important thing is, do you want to share it just like that, or you want to share it with an authentication page? So now we are going to learn how to add an authentication page on top of our Gradio application. So basically, when somebody clicks this link, let me show you this link. So basically, when somebody clicks this link, we don't want them to directly see this app. Like, we don't want anybody in the world to see this app, but we want only specific people who have access to this application. So maybe let's say I have generated a username and password and given it to them. I want only them to use this application. So if you want to add an authentication page, what are we going to do? And that is quite easy and simple unexpectedly. Usually adding an authentication page could be another overhead, but it is extremely simple here, because all you have to do is, when you're going to launch the application, all you have to do is you have to give auth, and also if you want any HTML message on the authentication page. So I'm going to show you how it works. First, let's start with an authentication page, a simple authentication page. I'm going to say auth is equal to, I'm going to add a username password. So basically I'm going to do like this, a tuple with username password, and the username here is, let's say I'm going to say user, and then the password I'm going to say is and one little coder. Okay, so this is the username, this is the password. Okay, I'm going to run this. After I run this thing, I've got the app. So I'm going to click the link here, and you can see it takes us to an authentication page. Let's say I'm going to give a wrong username password first. I'm going to say user, and the password I'm going to say something else. And when I do that, it says the server could not verify you. You either supplied a wrong credential or your browser doesn't understand how to supply the credential. So the first thing is it works. It works. The authentication works. It's not letting anybody to log in. So now let's try. I'm going to give one little coder, and then you can see it has successfully taken us into the application. So basically we have managed to add an authentication page on top of our Gradio UI just purely with one single argument. So added a value, username, password to auth argument, and then we have managed to add a login page. So let's refresh this. You can see this because we have already authenticated. So let's run this again, and I wanted to show you an extra thing. So when you run this thing, when you go here and see this thing, you can see the login page does not have much details. Let's say you have shared the login details to somebody in the email and you want to make this in the login page itself. So that is where you have an auth message. So I can say auth message. We can say check your strong login details, strong, send to your email. So we can say email, and if you want to add an emoticon, you can probably add an emoticon. So now you are adding a login message also along with the your authentication page, an authentication message also. So let me click this, go here, and then see it says check your login details sent to your email, and you have this thing. So this way people would know whether they have to look at their Slack channel or an email or a Discord or whatever it is, so that they actually know where the email is. Once again, let's just log in, one little coder, and then try. We have successfully managed to log in. So this is how it is quite easy and simple for you to add an authentication page to your Gradio application, and it's quite simple. So all you need to do is you can give a tuple, or also you have another option. So you can either give like a username password tuple, or you can take different formats also, like if you want, or you can have a function also like that takes username and password and then validate something and then returns true if there is like the valid authentication. Like let's say you have a DB, you don't want to just give hard coded values, then you can do all those things, and also you have the ability to provide an authentication message along with the login authentication page. So this basically takes us to the end of building a Gradio web application, but this course does not end here. We want to also deploy the Gradio application. So for what we have done here is we have managed to deploy the Gradio application, make it available on the collab interface with Gradio link. But can you deploy this Gradio application on a permanent hosting? And we are going to see in the next section how to deploy our Gradio application using Hugging Face spaces. This is the last section of this course, and if you have made till this section, congratulations, you have almost done something that nobody usually does. So in this final video, we are going to learn how to deploy a machine learning Gradio application permanently on Hugging Face spaces. So the first question that you might have is, why couldn't we have done whatever we were doing already as something permanently? So if you see this thing, this link, whatever you share, it is applicable only for 72 hours and the interface has to run. So after 72 hours, you may not get it, then you have to rerun it and then the URL might change. You have a lot of these complexities, and to avoid that, in a typical permanent hosting space, you need a server where you want to host it. And Hugging Face, the company, the machine learning company that used to be the NLP company, has made it really easy for anybody who uses Gradio or Streamlit to deploy very simply using Hugging Face spaces. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I've taken an existing Python script and then translated into a Gradio application, and then how are we going to deploy that. So the first thing, if you see, I am using Gradio and transformers. I am installing both these libraries, and from import Gradio as gr, and from transformers I'm importing pipeline. Transformers is the Hugging Face library. Pipeline is what we are going to use to build a very simple sentiment analysis tool. So the pipeline name is sentiment analysis because that is the task that we are trying to do. And after we do this thing, we are downloading all the pre-trained models. You can see the model because we have not specified any specific model. It has been defaulted to Distilbert, base and case fine-tune SST to English. It's basically a fine-tuned version of Distilbert. After that, we need an important function. So basically anything you want to do with your Gradio application, you have to wrap it around a function. So here in this case, we are doing a very simple function. So the function name is getSentiment, and then it has an input text and it returns as the sentiment output. The output would look like this. I'm not formatting the output here. I'm just leaving it out because I want it to be simple for you to deploy the application. I don't want to take a lot of time of you to modify whatever I'm trying to do. So it's going to be a very simple Gradio application. So the output is just a text that looks like this. After that, our function is at this point ready. So getSentiment function is ready, input is ready, and then the output is ready. And then we have also tested it, right? So I can write something saying that this course is super awesome. Okay, so that's my narcissistic view of this course. So it says it's positive, it's 97% positive. That's a good thing. So it's positive and 97%. And whatever you want to do, like for example, this course is terrible. So probably it should say it's negative. Will it? Yeah, it says negative. So basically we have managed to build a sentiment analysis solution using a deep learning model, which is Distilbert, and then with just few lines of Python code thanks to Hugging Face. Now what we have to do next is we have to take this script, the few lines of Python code, and translate into a Gradio application. And for that, we all know, if you have watched all the videos of this course, you would have probably known that we are going to say gr.interface, interface I with caps, upper caps, the function name, the input text, we have only one text, and then the output text, we have another only one text as output. And also we have the title. The title is sentiment analysis. We can also add a description if you want. We can say add get sentiment negative / positive for the given input. Okay, so we have managed to create the interface that looks like this. Maybe a better way is to do like this. This would increase readability, but again, I don't know why am I spending time on this thing, but maybe. Okay, so right now we have defined the interface with the object iFace. Now all we have to do is launch iFace. Let's see when we launch iFace. So again, you don't have to do this on Collab. You can do it on your local machine, and then finally, connect it with your Hugging Face Spaces Git and then upload it. I don't want to touch my local machine at this point. That's the whole reason I'm doing this, because I assume that a lot of people might be trying to do this using Collab. So that's why I want this deployment experience to be how you would do it on Collab. So we have the title, we have the description, we have the input text. So let's go ahead and then say this course is freaking awesome, and I love one little coder words. That's seriously narcissistic, but I would take it still. So it's a label positive. We have this thing again, like I said before, we are not formatting the output. So just a text I'm throwing it just for the demo purpose. So now at this point, our sentiment analysis application is up and ready. Now let's see what we are going to do with Hugging Face Spaces. First, go to Google and then probably say Hugging Face Spaces. You would get this. You need to sign in. If you Hugging Face Spaces have been recently made open for everybody, so it's out of beta. So if you have a Hugging Face account, you can log in with that. If you do not have, you have to create a new account. So I already have a Hugging Face account, so I'm going to use login. I'm going to use my username, and then I'm going to use my password, and I'm trying to log in. So this is how my initial dashboard or my space front page looks like. So now we have to create a new space. So I'm going to click spaces. After I click spaces, I can create new space. Let me see if I can change the theme. the dark theme to light theme. No, I couldn't change. I hope it is readable for all of you. So click create new space. You can read the documentation if you want. You can read, like what you can do with the Streamlit and Gradio, what kind of things you can do, how do you go about it, like the best practices, all these things. So the good thing is all the models that are available in Hugging Face transformers are also available for you here with less hassle. So create a new space. After you create a new space, we have to give a space name. So I'm going to call it Gradio Sentiment Analyzer. Is that a good name? Okay. And the SDK that we want to use is a Gradio SDK. And you want it to be public or private? Of course, I'm happy to be public. So at this point, you can see there is no application file. Your space, when you open the app, it shows there is nothing here. So you have to do certain things. For example, you can clone this repository. If you're familiar with Git, you can clone this repository on your local machine, and then you can create a simple app.py file, and then that app.py file can be served as an application. And after you create this on your local machine, then all you have to do is add the file to your Git, commit the file, and then push it, and then it would come here to this particular folder, and then your app is available to be served. But on the other hand, what we are going to do is we are going to do everything on the browser, because like I said, if somebody wants to try it out just based on Google Colab, like you have already used Google Colab, your local machine is not powerful enough, you don't know Git, you don't have rights to do Git. If you are in any of these categories, then proceeding section is for you. So I'm going to use the create button at the last. So let's open the create app.py file, the new tab, and then we have to copy our code one by one. So you can copy one by one, or in my case, I've already copied everything, so I'm going to paste. So the first line is to import Gradio. The second line is to import pipeline from transformers. Then we have the sentiment analysis pipeline task, and then we have the function that helps us to get the sentiment. Then we have the interface, and finally we have the launch. And once we have all these things in place, you can specify launch inline is equal to false as well. If you don't want it to be in, usually you use inline is equal to false when you are going to avoid the app to be embedded within your Google Colab notebook, like if you want it to be launched separately. So now at this point everything is ready. Let's go ahead and then commit the new file. We have successfully committed, and you can see it is trying to build, but it will end in a building error. The reason why it will end in a building error is because we have to install the transformers library. So even though Hugging Face Spaces is actually on Hugging Face, still you have to manually install the transformers library, and also Torch, which is a dependency for transformers library. Before we install the library, right now there is an error. That's completely fine. I just wanted to highlight the readme. So if you are using this template by default, you are sorted out. But if you are not using this, then you need to make sure that you have this YAML at the top clearly, because this is very important. Without this part, the YAML part on the top, your app would not be rendered properly on Hugging Face. So you have the title, you have the emoji, you have the color, and you have the app file SDK and the app file, which is actually used to serve the application. So let's quickly go ahead and then create a new requirements.txt file, requirements.txt. Oops. And then we need two things. One, we need Torch. Second thing, we need transformers. So ideally we should be able to. So the first thing is they're going to install these applications libraries, and after that they will render our app.py, and our app.py, because we have already tested, it should be successfully running. Let's see. You can never be sure. Okay, it says it's running. So let's copy this URL, go to a new tab, and then paste it. Oh, wait, I think I got a little excited. We have to copy the entire URL, go back here, paste it, and then see. Okay, it has successfully managed to work, and also it has got the dark theme that goes well with the Hugging Face dark theme that we have spaces. So I'm going to give an input text. Probably, I think I'm tired of saying that this course is awesome, so maybe for a change I'm going to say Gradio is awesome, and I thank the developers for this amazing tool. Let's submit. Okay, it's positive. So maybe I can say Java sucks. And then you have negative. So you have basically positive and negative. And at this point, you have successfully managed to build a full-fledged machine learning, deep learning powered application, deployed it, deep learning powered Gradio application, and successfully deployed it on Hugging Face spaces. Now you can copy this link and then give it to anybody. If you want anybody to use the API, again, you have this thing also available for you. So you have successfully managed to learn everything from building a simple Gradio application to improving the UI of the application, and then finally hosting or deploying your application permanently on Hugging Face spaces for free at this point. I don't know whether they'll charge us later, but at this point for free, which you can share it with anybody in the world. Thank you so much. Congratulations. We have reached the end of this course. Thank you so much for watching this course, and I hope you found this course really valuable in learning how to build a machine learning web application using Gradio and also to deploy that application. You could use this for a lot of different purposes as it is described in the course, and I would love to see the Gradio application that you have built during the course of this course. If you have any more questions, please let us know in the comment section. You can always reach out to us on Twitter, and also please make sure that you subscribe to our channel and share it with your friends. I wish you the best for your machine learning journey. Happy coding.